So engagement is engagement. Even as adults, we can be engaged or not engaged. I think we go to the airport all the time and we see people checking out because it's easier to look at my iPhone than it is to engage. Engagement takes work. There are rules, there are conversational conventions for engagement. And it's kind of interesting when we get tired or whatever, and it's just easier to be object-oriented. Well, left unchecked, these kids with autism, left unchecked, object-oriented, looking at iPads or whatever, they're going to continue to not be engaged. And so if they're not engaged, what we talked about earlier is, well, then we have to get in the middle and start teaching them skills, whether it's vocabulary or whatever. That's very inefficient, ineffective. So when you look at engagement, even for middle schoolers or high schoolers, not only do you have to be engaged socially, and that's why we work on social engagement, social priority early on, you have to maintain your engagement even if it's not your topic of interest. You didn't start the topic. You're not really that crazy about the person that you're talking with, things of this nature. So when you look at young kids and you know that they would rather be playing with iPads or objects as opposed to engaging, we have to be part of that early development of social priority, because everything that I do is not going to be motivating. You hear this all the time. My child's bored. And then what happens is like, oh, well, let's give them something else to do because they're not motivated or they're bored. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Life isn't about me entertaining you. That is a reality that is going to catch up with you very soon in middle or high school and beyond. So what I'm saying, and our mutual engagement, it doesn't have to be based on motivation of the operant conditioning, rewards, or whatever. And it doesn't have to be on, I'm only going to check in if you're talking about what I'm interested in, and if not, I'm going to check out. When we're preparing our kids for the work environment after school, these supports aren't going to be there. And so if a child learns that I'm only going to engage when you're following and assisting me in my topic of interest, and you're supporting me staying on this topic, and I will, by the way, I will spend hours talking about Pokemon or Game Boy. I can do that. But isn't it interesting when you get off Game Boy or Minecraft or whatever, you see that engagement just drop off the cliff? Because that's the way they've been taught. It's like, wow, you're not interested, so let me up the entertainment value for you, okay? And so what kids have to learn early on is how to maintain interaction even when, Pat, you're not in charge, or you're not doing exactly what I want to do. Kim, you're not talking about what you would rather be talking about, things of this nature. But we do get into the whole idea of when then. When we interact according to the mutually agreed upon topic or agenda, and we're all contributing to that. When we get done, then Kim, you get to establish the topic, and then we will follow your lead. And then Tammy, Charlie, your turn, okay? So then we will follow your lead in this conversation. What do we call that in adolescence? We call that topic shifting. That's a topic shift. I'm kind of done talking about my vacation, so Kim, now we'll start talking about your vacation, and we're all going to contribute. in that process, we have the social communicative conventions that go with holding and maintaining a conversation, even if it's not in my wheelhouse or my high interest area. To prepare kids for school and beyond, they need to be able to converse and interact and maintain even when it wasn't their idea or their highly preferred topic of conversation. Okay? So I think that's kind of an important thing, that we start down here and we work toward up here. Okay? And I think sometimes when we talk about conversations or activities that may not be high interest to kids with ASD, that's when we get a little bit more visual. We're going to do this activity for this amount of time, and then we're all mutually agreed we're going to be done. It's kind of like doing a meeting agenda, okay? So we all agree that this is what we're going to be talking about, kind of in this general sequence, and then when we're done with item number 10, we're done with the meeting. We've all agreed on the framework, okay? A framework of how to have this meeting. Conversations are kind of the same way. When we engage in conversations, there is a framework. There are social communicative conventions to holding a conversation. Where does that start? Not in adolescence. It starts at 2 and at 3. Sharing the control, having a social priority even when it's not your topic, controlled variation, being able to vary and not have a scripted conversation, to be able to maintain this conversation for a longer period of time, not just 1 or 2 exchanges, because that's not a conversation, that's interrogation. And so, it all starts with these learning style components at an early age, even through behavioral means. And as it progresses, you add more language to what they already know. And that's what we talked about earlier. Talk about what you know. Okay, talk about what you know. Establish those conventions, and then you can put words on top of it. So a good part of the speech pathology early on in training in schools, in many ways, is nonverbal. So I think that holds true for even when speech pathologists say, "Wow, I wish I would have known this, when this child was 2. Now he's 18. What do we do?" I'm like, do the same thing. Stop talking. They're like, "But we're working on conversations." I'm like, yeah, stop talking. Establish shared control, okay? Contingent interaction. When you do something, Charlie, when I hand this to you and you take it and take the lid off, that's contingent interaction because you just received what I gave you. Contingent commenting is the same thing in conversation. My comment is contingent on your comment, which is contingent on mine. Early on, my actions are contingent on your actions, which are contingent on mine. It's the same stuff, guys. It's just at a higher developmental level. So even if you have an adolescent who you're trying to get to be more conversational, stop talking and just go back to some of these behavioral structures and components. And then when they have that down, now you can build language back into it. I know I had this one girl who wasn't really good at conversation, and we did YouTube therapy, and her role was just to listen to mom and her sister and her sister's friend and me as we watched YouTube videos, and her only job was to listen to what everyone else was saying, how they were holding conversations, how they were contingently responding, what they were saying, how they were describing, how they were feeding off each other, all of that. And that's how we taught this girl how to have conversations. She was fully capable of having full extended sentences. She didn't know how to have a conversation. And that's how we started. And then she started to, through the wingman approach, started to kind of add in a comment or two, or laughed when other people laughed, or commented to, or gave her opinion, which is the perspective taking, and be contingent in her comments and questions and things of this nature. And this group, the only thing that I said, just talk about what you see on this visual screen. That's all you have to do. That becomes your visual topic. But do not ask her one question. Do not look at her and ask her a question to pull her in. Okay? You just have a conversation. You're her wingman. This is the visual topic. Ready, go. That's all we did. And it was just, and it was amazing because she is the one who looked up, looked around, understood how and when to communicate with no one prompting her. And she took all of those verbal social cues without someone telling her what to say it over and over again, use your scripts. This is how and when you're supposed to say what you're supposed to say. And she's in college. I think she's now graduated. Fully conversational, on Twitter, on Facebook, blowing up her cell phone, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's pretty. That's just an example of being efficient and not teaching this training of what to say, how to say it, when to say it. Again, I think where it comes back to is whether you have autism or you're a neurotypical child, is developing that level of social priority. Okay? It doesn't just happen sometimes for kids with autism unless, again, they're doing what they want to do and according to their comfort zone. And so I think by developing this social priority, it's kind of interesting. Kids with autism are really like kids, typically developing kids, your own kids. If your child wants to borrow the car on Saturday night and you say, all right, that can happen. When you get these things done, isn't it interesting how teenagers will start snapping too? And all of a sudden, they get these things done. Now, some people might call that a reward. Maybe. But I see that the car picking up your buddies hanging out on Saturday night is a priority. So your actions and your behaviors and what you do and your accountability goes to support that social priority. Okay? If I have a social priority of being with people, that's important to me. My communication skills and my social skills will start supporting that priority because that's important to me. Not because you told me that this is what I need to do or say, okay? Because I kind of know it's important to you. But kids with ASD have a funny way of saying to us, I know it's important to you, but it's really not important to me. And really it's not important to me that it's important to you. That's kind of what kids say. You know, it's like, stop, like, basically bugging me. So when you talk about social priorities, it's very interesting. If it's important enough for me to stick and maintain together with you and glue together, I'm going to start to listen to what you're saying and how you're saying it. Just like I talked about earlier, this girl doing the YouTube therapy, it was a priority for her to have a conversation with her girlfriends because she saw all of her girlfriends having conversations, but she didn't have a game plan. She didn't know what to do. And she came to therapy every week and with her mom and her sisters, and she was attentive and she learned and all of these things. So whether you have autism or neurotypical, establishing that priority of being with people, it makes our job so much easier.